Every SEO account manager has the same slide in their deck. Refresh your old content and watch the traffic come back. I've heard that line so many times it starts to sound like a law of physics instead of a tactic that works sometimes and does nothing the rest of the time. The annoying part is nobody tells you which case you're in until after you've spent the hours doing the rewrite. I run a portfolio of content sites, more than a dozen at this point, spread across SEO, proxies, and a handful of other niches. I refresh pages constantly. Some weeks is the main thing I'm doing. So I've watched this play out enough times on my own money and my own hours to have a clear view of what the refresh does and doesn't fix. No guarantee at the end, because if I gave you one, it would be a lie. Here's the thing nobody says out loud on that slide. A refresh only works if it addresses the reason the page lost traffic in the first place. There are a handful of different reasons a page can drop, and they are not the same problem wearing different clothes. They need different fixes. Skip the step of figuring out which one you're dealing with and go straight to editing, and you're basically guessing, and guessing is expensive when being wrong means a full rewrite that changes nothing. Reason 1. The information went stale. Prices changed, a tool got discontinued, a law got updated, a best of list still recommends something that shipped a replacement 2 years ago. I had a page recommending a proxy tool that doesn't exist anymore. The company folded, the page was still live, still pulling a few hundred visits a month from people who bounced the second they realized it didn't work. Readers leave because the page lied to them even by accident. This is the cleanest case for a refresh there is. The fix is literally just updating the facts. Reason 2. Somebody built something better than you. A competitor published a longer, better organized, more specific version of the same page, and it displaced yours in the results. This has nothing to do with staleness. Your page could be factually perfect and still lose because it's getting outclassed on depth or structure. A refresh here means actually raising the quality bar, not changing the updated on date and calling it a day. I've done the lazy version, date change, no real substance, and it does nothing because nothing about the page actually got better. Reason 3, the search intent shifted underneath the page. The query used to want a plain definition, now it wants a comparison table, or a calculator, or a ranked list of tools. You find this by looking at what currently ranks for the query and asking what format it's in. If the 5 results above you are step-by-step guides and yours is 3 paragraphs of prose, that's the market telling you what it wants now, and your job is to notice. Reason 4, and this one stings a little, the page was just never that good. Sometimes it ranked years ago because there was less competition, not because it was well built. Refresh a page like that all you want, it's a coat of paint on a wall with a crack running through the foundation. It might buy a few weeks. It doesn't fix the underlying problem, which is that the page never actually deserved to rank on its own merit. Reason 5, nothing changed on the page at all. Something changed on the site. If a whole section drops at once, 10 pages, 20 pages, all around the same date, it's rarely about any single page's content. It's far more likely a technical issue, a crawl budget problem, or some site-wide trust signal moving. I've burnt entire weeks refreshing individual pages in that exact situation before checking the obvious stuff first. Every hour of that was wasted. The problem was never on the page I was editing. So the first job in any refresh is not editing, it's diagnosis. Pull the page's performance history, find the exact date the drop happened, and check what else happened on the site or in the results around that window. Did a competitor publish something? Did the site push an update? Did rankings across a whole folder move together? This takes maybe 20 minutes and tells you whether you're about to fix the actual problem or just polish something that was never broken the way you assumed. Position something. When a refresh does work, here's what's actually happening underneath it. The page gets re-crawled, and whatever is crawling, it sees new text, new dates, new structure, and reassesses what the page is about and how current it is. This doesn't happen instantly. It happens on whatever crawl schedule that URL normally gets. And for a lower authority page on a smaller site, that schedule can be slow. I've refreshed pages that didn't get meaningfully recrawled for close to 2 weeks. Engagement can genuinely improve too. If the old page had readers bouncing because the content was thin or the facts were outdated and the new version actually answers the question properly, people stay longer and click through to other pages on the site. Engagement isn't some lever you can manufacture by padding word count, but the page that genuinely serves the query better tends to keep readers, and that's a real difference you can see in your own analytics regardless of what anything downstream does with that signal. Internal link equity gets a reason to flow again, and this is the part almost everyone skips. A refresh is a natural point to add new internal links to and from the page, connecting it to newer content that didn't exist when the original was written. I skip this step myself more than I'd like to admit. Editing the text feels like the real work. Adding links feels like an afterthought, but it's one of the more concrete, fully controllable things a refresh can fix, because it doesn't depend on anything outside your own site. And if the reason for the drop was a better competing page, and your refresh actually closes that gap in depth or structure or usefulness, you're back in contention, not guaranteed to win the spot back, just back in the running, competing on the same terms you were competing on before someone else raised the bar. That's a meaningfully different claim than what you get on the slide, and it's the honest version of it. Here's what doesn't get recovered just by refreshing a page, and this is the part that matters most. A page's original age advantage doesn't come back. Any links it lost when other sites removed references to it don't come back either, and the ranking position propped up only by weaker competition that since improved doesn't come back just because you edited the copy. A refresh doesn't reset the clock on any of that. It just gives the page a fair shot at being evaluated again on today's terms against today's competitions. So if you've actually diagnosed the problem and a refresh is the right move, here's how I do it in practice. First, check the current top results before touching anything, not to copy them, but to see what format and depth is winning right now. I open the top 5 in tabs, note the structure, the length, whether they use tables or lists or calculators. That 15 minutes tells me more than an hour of guessing what the page needs. Second, update facts, not just the date. Changing the updated on label without changing anything substantive is something readers notice immediately, and it does nothing for relevant signals either. The content that gets crawled hasn't actually changed. I learned this the expensive way. I used to bulk update dates across a batch of pages thinking it would nudge them. It moved nothing. Nothing had actually moved. If you're not going to change the substance, don't bother touching the date. Third, cut what's outdated instead of only adding to it. A refresh that only appends new sections without removing dead information just gets longer and messier. It doesn't get better. If a tool no longer exists, delete the paragraph about it. Don't just tack on a note saying it's discontinued and leave 3 paragraphs praising it sitting right above that note. I've seen pages like that contradicting themselves in the same scroll. It reads as sloppy to anyone who reads past the first line. Fourth, fix the title and the meta description if the query has shifted. If people are now searching with different phrasing or a different intent than when you originally wrote the page, the title tag and description need to reflect that, not just the body copy underneath them. This is a 5-minute fix people skip constantly because it feels less important than the article itself, but it's often the first thing that decides whether someone clicked through at all. Fifth, actually relink the page into the site. Find newer, relevant pages and link to and from the refreshed page, both directions. This is the step that gets skipped most often. It takes real time to find those pages and place the links naturally, and editing the text feels faster and more satisfying. But it's one of the few parts of a refresh with a fully mechanical, fully verifiable effect. You can literally check the links exist and check that they still exist 6 months later. 6. Give it time before you judge it. Recrawling isn't instant, and neither is engagement data building up to a sample size that means anything. Checking 3 days later and calling it a failure is checking too early, every time. I wait a minimum of 3 or 4 weeks before I decide a refresh did nothing, and even then I'm looking at trend, not 1 week's number against another. Now, sometimes the honest answer is that refreshing isn't worth your time at all, and that's the part the slide never mentions. If a page targets a topic your site has no real authority or unique angle on, an update won't manufacture authority that was never there. If the page is cannibalizing another page on your own site that's already doing better on the same query, the fix is consolidating the 2 into 1, not refreshing both so they keep competing against each other. And if the drop was caused by something entirely off-site, a lost backlink, a referring domain going down, a directory delisting you, No amount of on-page editing touches any of that. I've spent hours polishing pages that were never going to move because the actual problem lived somewhere else on the site or off it entirely, in a link that disappeared or a domain that went dark. That time would have been much better spent finding the real cause first instead of assuming the page itself was at fault. A refresh is a tool for a specific, narrow set of problems: stale facts, an outdated format, or a page that's fallen behind newer competition. It's not a universal reset button. Treating it like one is exactly how you end up refreshing the same page 3 times over 2 years without ever figuring out why it keeps sliding. So before you refresh anything, know why the page actually lost ground. If you can name the real cause, specifically, not vaguely, the refresh has a real job to do and a real chance of working. If you can't name it, spend the time diagnosing instead of editing, because a rewrite aimed at the wrong problem doesn't fix anything. It just delays you finding the problem that was there the whole time. If you want the actual playbooks behind this, step by step, with real numbers pulled from sites I run myself, not agency case study theater dressed up to sell you a retainer, that's what I've put together at thesodesk.com. Full playbooks and tool tests are at thesodesk.com. Go take a look. And if this was useful to you, subscribe for more of this.